Alright everyone, so in today's video we're going to kind of be doing a part 3 of the previous 2 videos we did restoring the jet ski and doing the gel coat. This is something I've been putting off for a while on my boat. I had a repair that was probably about 6 inches right here, and I got the repair done and everything was good, but I needed to get this out on the lake that weekend, so I just kind of threw some spray paint on it. And it's been that way for probably 6 years now. So today we're gonna sand down the spray paint and take it down to the repair, and then we're gonna go ahead and brush on some gel coat. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and just start to take some of the spray paint off. Once I start to get close to the gel coat, we'll kind of slow down and maybe switch grip, but right now we're just trying to get the bulk of this out. So back to part 1 of our jet ski repair video. We get a lot of questions and comments asking how the repair is holding up over time and if we think it's going to hold up. And to answer that, yes, it's holding up fine, and we knew it would, because like we mentioned in the first video, this is a repair very similar to one we would do on an aircraft composite structure. So like I said, we had no doubt that this was going to hold up fine. And to further back that up, the repair we did on the jet ski is almost exactly the same as the repair I did on this boat, and that was about 6 years ago. And to tell you how it's been holding up, I take my boat up north about 3 hours multiple times a year, and anyone that's driven on Michigan roads know that they're not great. And it's to the point where I actually have a cracked weld on my tower support because of just how the boat sits on the trailer and kind of bounces around and shifts in the wind. So, like I said, this repair is holding up perfectly fine, and we had no doubt that it wouldn't. Alright, so we've got our repair all sanded down, and we've kind of gone in deeper than the rest of the boat, and that's so as we build this gel coat up, it's not bubbled out, and that gives us the ability to sand it smooth, and we'll be able to cut it and polish it, and everything will be nice and flush, and you won't have any humps or little divots. So we're going to go ahead and get this area cleaned up with some acetone and get all the sanding dust off. And then we'll just let that dry and we'll talk about gel coat. Right, so in the last video we talked about the 2 different types of gel coat. There's with wax and without wax, and we're using with wax. And the way a gel coat cures is a lack of oxygen. So the wax in this, as you put it on, will actually come to the surface and make a barrier, which will in turn allow the gel coat to cure. So if you have the without wax, you'll have to cover this with something. Now, in our case, how this is going to affect us is we're going to be doing 2 or 3 different coats to kind of blend this in. So what that means is after we put the first coat on, we're going to have to let that dry completely, and we're going to have to do a light sanding on the surface to get that wax off, because we don't want to try and put gel coat on top of wax because it's not really going to stick. So our first coat is pretty much going to be the same layup as we did the fiberglass repair. We're going to cover just this portion of it, and then our second coat will extend into the other gel coat, and then if we do a third coat, it'll come even further, and that'll give us the ability to kind of feather this repair in. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a mix cup, and we'll get this MEK mixed in and our gel coat ready to put on. Alright, so we've got our MEK mixed into our gel coat, and we'll go ahead and brush this on. Now we're not really worried about this going on too thick or having brush strokes, because again, we are going to be sanding this out and then wet sanding and polishing the entire boat. So we'll let that set up, and then we'll go ahead and sand that down, and just pretty much repeat that 2 or 3 more times until we build this gel coat up and are able to feather it out. Alright, so our first coating of the gel coat has cured for 24 hours, and I've gone ahead and wet sanded this down with 220 grit. You can see the gel coat went on nice and thick, and it kind of filled all the low spots, and then when we sanded, we've got high spots now. So now what we're going to do is come in with a foam brush, since we don't need this to go on nearly as thick, and we're going to go ahead and put our second coat on and overlap that a little to about here. Alright, so we'll go ahead and let that cure another day, and we'll just gently knock this down, probably wet sanding with 600 grit, just to knock that surface off. And then we'll do one more coat that's probably about an inch past this one. Alright, so we've got 3 layers of gel coat built up, and it's extended quite past our repair. So we're going to go ahead and get this ready to go. We're going to wet sand this down. I'm going to start with 220, and then eventually we'll work our way down to 1000 and blend this in, then we'll polish and buff the whole thing. So we just finished wet sanding down to 1000 grit, so we'll go ahead and rinse all this sanding dust off. We sanded the repair and then the area surrounding it, and then over here you can kind of see where the original paint is, which hopefully a lot of this oxidation is going to buff out. So what we're going to go ahead and do is let this dry, and then we'll get to hitting this with the buffing compound and then polish this out, and hopefully some of this color in the area next to it comes back. So now that the water from wet sanding has dried, you can kind of see everything we've got going on with the surface here. So here is where we re-gel coated. You can see it's a little darker than the area next to it where we wet sanded the old gel coat. Hopefully when we polish this, this is going to shine up. This area was untouched by the spray paint, and then over here you can see we've just got some heavy oxidation. Over here we were testing out the polish, so that's what hopefully it should look like. And then hopefully these areas here, we bring out the color when we polish it. So we're gonna go ahead and use the Meguiar's 67 to start with. This is a 1-step cutting compound, and it is a pretty heavy cleaner. We did try it on the other side in some spots, and it does take a lot of this oxidation out. So we'll go ahead and start with that before we polish. So we've got this buffed out with the cutting compound, and that did a real good job of getting rid of all that oxidation and staining. Still a little bit of a slight color difference where we did our repair, but now what we're gonna go ahead and do is hit this with the Meguiar's 45 polish. This is for boats and RVs, and hopefully that's gonna bring back some of that gloss. So we're gonna go ahead and do the whole side with that, with the polish. And after that, we'll go ahead and wax it with a Meguiar's ceramic wax. So we are all polished and waxed up. I think overall this repair turned out pretty good. I'd say one disadvantage of brushing this on versus spraying, you do kind of get some brush strokes in there that are hard to sand out. But overall, I'd say this turned out really good. It's feathered it nicely. You can hardly tell the difference, and it looks a lot better than the spray paint did. So pretty happy with this. For a small repair, I'd say brushing is probably easier than doing a spray, but like I said, you do kind of end up with a rough surface that you have to do a lot of sanding.